This is long-term time-lapse for beginners.
Or, as I like to call it, help. I've just told my client I can shoot a long-term time-lapse project for them, but I actually don't know how to do it.
Yet.
That's where we come in. G'day, I'm Matt from Photo Sentinel Australia.
And I'm Ross from Photo Sentinel USA.
And in this video, we're going to give you a broad overview and introduction of the art and the business of long-term time-lapse. First off, if you've told your client you can shoot a long-term time-lapse project for them, but don't know how, don't worry, you're not alone. That's one of the most common requests that we get from first-time customers is, I told my client I could do it, but can you guys actually tell me what I need to do? So for that reason, we've made a whole series of videos that do a deep dive into different topics around long-term time-lapse. This is the first of those videos. It's a broad introduction to start educating you on some of the things you'll need to think about. And then when you're ready to learn more, make sure you go to our channel and check out all those other videos to go into more depth on each of the relevant topics.
First off, long-term time-lapse is very different than anything you've done before, specifically short-term time-lapse. Now, there are a lot of transferable skills from short-term time-lapse that are very valuable, but it's very important to think about and get educated around long-term time-lapse for the success of your project.
We're going to look at 4 areas in which long-term time-lapse has unique requirements. So that's the equipment, production, post-production, and the business side of long-term time-lapse. First off, long-term time-lapse requires specialised equipment. That equipment needs to cover off a number of different things. It needs to power the camera and the controller for the entire life of the project. It needs to be able to turn the camera off and on, and it needs to be able to trigger photos at regular intervals. And most long-term time-lapse systems connect to the cloud, both so that it can send status reporting and photos, and it can also receive changes in configuration along the project. Because of all these different complex requirements, we definitely recommend going with a tried and true professional time-lapse system. Obviously, we're biased. We think you should go for Photo Sentinel. But even if you don't go for Photo Sentinel, we would advise against going down the DIY route because the reality is, unless you can test it for 2 or 3 years, you're not going to know if it's going to last the full 2 or 3 years. Going with a professional system like Photo Sentinel, you know it's already been used around the world on thousands of projects across many years, and so you know you're getting reliability and a system that is built specifically for long-term time-lapse, and that's going to ensure the success of your project. For a deeper dive into choosing long-term time-lapse equipment and the principles that should guide your decision making, make sure you check out our video on choosing long-term time-lapse equipment.
The other piece of equipment that you need is a camera and lens. Now, as a photographer, you might assume that you need a high-end DSLR and camera, full frame. The reality is, for long-term time-lapse, an entry-level DSLR will do the trick. Generally speaking, you don't want to have to lock up a $4,000 piece of equipment for multiple years that could be making you money on other projects. So for long-term time-lapse, a crop sensor will give you plenty of quality to be able to create your final time-lapse video. For more information on the camera and lens choice, check out the video we made around this topic.
So long-term time-lapse is unique in the equipment it uses, and the second way it's unique is, of course, in the production itself. So first off, intervals. Now the question here is, what change are you documenting with your time-lapse? Are you tracking the people moving around site, the buildings moving, the cranes moving? If you are, then it's going to be more like a short-term time-lapse because you want to be shooting short intervals to capture that action. But the reality is 95% of the time with long-term time-lapse, the change that you're capturing is the construction subject itself. And change on that goes pretty slow. And so you're going to end up taking photos at much longer intervals. There are a whole range of things you need to consider here that have to do with data requirements if you're uploading photos, have to do with your client's expectations if they're using it for project monitoring. And so make sure you go and check out our video on what interval should I use for long-term time-lapse. But the cheat sheet version is, generally speaking, for most projects, a photo somewhere between every 10 minutes and every 30 minutes is what you want to shoot.
When you're uploading photos, you need to think about your data usage. We recommend that you sit down, take the time to calculate this out. I've seen far too many photographers not take the 10 or 15 minutes that it takes to consider this, and at the end of the month, they get a big bill that they're pretty disappointed by. So we've created a video to help walk you through this process. Check it out.
The other thing that you need to plan well when you're shooting long-term time-lapse is where you're going to install the camera. And again, there are a range of different things you need to consider. Is the site easy to access? Is it easy to access throughout the whole project in case you need to go and do maintenance? Where's the sun positioned not just on the day you go and do your scouting, but at different times through the year? Where are you going to put your solar panel? So there's a whole range of things you need to consider. The takeaway here is make sure you take the time to do your scouting properly and do your planning properly. And again, we've got resources on our website, a project planner and a video that take you through planning. And of course, you can always call up one of our experts who are happy to sit down with you and take you through planning your project and the installation step by step.
Another consideration is to plan for things to go wrong. Now, in a perfect world, nothing ever goes wrong, everything's great. In reality, with long-term time-lapse, you need to plan and budget for site visits, because the last thing you want to do is to not budget it out and all of a sudden you're losing money instead of gaining money on the project.
The final thing to say about the production of long-term time-lapse is don't just think about the final video you're going to deliver at the end of the project. You're providing a service for your client over months, over years. So when planning out your long-term time-lapse project, make sure you're also planning how you're going to deliver value every step of the way for the entire project. We've done a video, how to wow your long-term time-lapse clients, that'll give you some ideas for that. So long-term time-lapse is unique in the equipment you're going to use, it's unique in the production, and it is of course also unique in the post-production stage. The main post-production challenge with long-term time-lapse is how to deal with these huge changes in lighting, or as time-lapse photographers generally call it, flicker. With long-term time-lapse, you've got lighting flicker where the lighting changes, but you've also got object flicker. There's a truck in one photo, it's not in the next photo. There's a crane, there's a person in one photo, they're not in the next photo. And if you just stitch those photos together, it's like watching a strobe light, and it's completely unwatchable. There are two ways you can approach this post-production challenge. The first is to edit it yourself. And by far, the best program on the market for doing that is LR Time-Lapse. Originally created for editing short-term time-lapses, the latest version of LR Time-Lapse actually has a dedicated long-term time-lapse workflow. And Gunther, the creator of the program, has done a full tutorial on how to edit long-term time-lapse using LR Time-Lapse and Lightroom. The second approach, so you don't have to edit it yourself, is to use the Photo Sentinel time-lapse generator. The time-lapse generator will do all those post-production steps for you. With just the click of a button, it will deliver a fully edited time-lapse movie.
Now, we love long-term time-lapse, but let's be honest, a single angle of a construction project for a 2-minute video over a 2-year project isn't necessarily going to hold a viewer's attention. So it's important to think through how we're going to spice this video up to keep people's attention. So you want to think about this from the beginning of your project, because you need to plan for all these critical moments that are going to happen. Maybe you want to get some drone footage, some short-term time-lapse going on of some critical moments. You need to know when the critical moments are happening so you can plan for them accordingly and you can spice up your video.
Other ways to make your final time-lapse video a bit more interesting are things like adding motion graphics with stats of the project, or zooming into the details, panning around the image to capture the different points of interest. But hey, we're the long-term time-lapse equipment professionals, you're the creative professional. So really it's up to you. What are you going to do to make your video stand out?
The last thing to consider is the business of long-term time-lapse. It's important to think of long-term time-lapse not just as a final product, but as a monthly service that you're providing to the end client. So it's important to recognize throughout the project, how am I continuing to delight the customer? How am I adding value? In particular, uploading photos to an online gallery is providing the client with real-time information to help them make important decisions for their business. They also have historical logs of photos which can be used for disputes. All these things are incredibly valuable and allow you to charge a monthly service. So it's important to think about all these things when you are pitching your long-term time-lapse project. Make sure you look for our videos on how to pitch long-term time-lapse and how to charge for it.
So that's an introduction to the art and business of long-term time-lapse. There are lots of moving parts to making your long-term time-lapse project successful. But we've got resources for you. We've got experts you can call, you can email. We're here to help you succeed. So make sure you watch all our videos and reach out to chat.